Right, folks. So, when was the last time you heard of a jewelry IPO hitting the domestic capital markets? Well, I did some digging, and the last company to hit the domestic capital markets from the jewelry segment was PC Jewellers, and that was nearly 8 years back. December 2012 is when the PC Jewellers 600 crore IPO opened. Now it's time for a new player in the jewelry segment to in fact start its preparations for its much awaited D Street debut. And that new player is Kerala based jewelry retail firm Kalyan Jewellers. Kalyan Jewellers is backed by private equity giant Warburg Pincus. We're given to understand from our sources that today the firm has filed its DRHP or draft red herring prospectus with market regulator SEBI, and this is for an IPO to raise around 1,750 crore rupees. So that's the news that we have reported today on Moneycontrol, and in fact Moneycontrol was the first to highlight the revival of the IPO plans of Kalyan Jewellers back on August 1st, earlier this month. Now, what's the rationale behind the Kalyan Jewellers IPO? Well, there are a few factors over there. A, it will help to provide a partial exit to the private equity investor, that's Warburg Pincus. B, it will help to facilitate working capital. It will help to facilitate funds for store expansion, and also to a certain extent, facilitate debt reduction and for general corporate purposes. So that's the driving force behind the IPO. Now, if you look at the components of the IPO, there's a fresh issue. So the fresh issue component is 1,000 crore rupees, and we have Kalyan Jewellers, which is the promoters of Kalyan Jewellers, and the PE player, that is Warburg Pincus, both diluting stake worth 250 crore rupees and 500 crore rupees respectively. So 250 crore rupees from the promoter's side, 500 crore rupees from the private equity investor's side. So that's the split as far as this IPO is concerned. Axis Capital, ICICI Securities, Citi and SBI Capital are the investment banks working on this IPO. Law firms AZP and Partners, Khaitan & Co. and Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas are the legal advisors working on this IPO. Now let's take a look at the environment in which this DRHP has been filed. Very interesting times, because if you look at the domestic jewelry environment, all the players are in fact slowly trudging back to recovery after being pounded pretty badly during the peak of COVID-19, and that's when the footfalls were hurt, that's when the sales were hurt. But many of them are now speaking about a gradual recovery, and therefore going ahead, the festival season and the wedding season will be extremely important as far as a complete proper revival in the jewelry segment is concerned. In fact, the Kalyan Jewellers management is pretty optimistic. They in fact recently shared with the media that their performance is nearly the same as last year if you compare both the same periods, and that footfalls are nearing normalcy. So they are definitely singing an optimistic tune, and that's the reason why they have gone ahead and filed this DRHP today. If you look at the financials of Kalyan Jewellers, now Kalyan Jewellers FY19 operating income stood at about 7,450 crore rupees approximately. PAT was about 50 crore rupees. That's according to a September 2019 ICRA report. Now the same ICRA report says that Warburg Pincus holds a stake of about 30% in the firm. If you look at the length, breadth and scope of Kalyan Jewellers. Now Kalyan Jewellers has more than 135 showrooms across 19 states in India, including 2 union territories. It's also present in 5 countries abroad, especially the Middle East region, and it also has an online brand called Candier. So those are some details about the issuer company, that's Kalyan Jewellers. Keep in mind though that if you look at the listed peers of Kalyan Jewellers, and I'm talking about the likes of Titan, Renaissance Global, Weber Global, well, all these stocks have rallied pretty sharply in the last 3 months if you look at their respective charts. So it's quite an interesting timing. It's a jewelry player that is looking to hit the markets after a long gap. Like I said, the last IPO was 8 years back. The big question, of course, will be whether other players, other regional players, especially players down south like Joy Alucas, Malabar Jewellers, whether these folks will be enthused to file an IPO as well after looking at what Kalyan Jewellers has done? Well, we'll have to wait and watch for that one. Stay tuned to Money Control for more news, views and updates, and thanks for listening to this video.